was pre-med, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go to med school, I'm going to be a cardiologist, I'm going to do all that. Turns out you need 2 years of chemistry before you can even go to med school, and I'm real bad at chemistry, y'all. like embarrassingly bad. And so, turns out I don't like to do things I'm bad at. So, I dropped out of that class. There's still a W on my college transcript. And that was when I was like, okay, it's time to get real about what we really want to do. And so I was planning on taking a few theater classes just sort of casually, and then I saw that a lot of my friends were actually majoring in it, and I was like, oh, this is a thing you can do. And so I was on scholarship, and I went down to the scholarship office, and I was like, so let's say I'm not pre-med anymore. You gonna want your money back? And they were like, no, that's ludicrous. Why would we do that? So that's how it all got started for me. I can't say that led directly to a big break, but I think that was the first time I was like, I need to make real decisions for what I really want to do, because, you know, life's short and tomorrow's not promised.
At what point in your career did you feel your voice in what you do? And so, at what point would you say you recognized your voice?
Finding those writers and I'm sitting up here with great screenwriters, so they might take a little bit of offense to this, but who write to the reader. You know, it's a very specific medium, and those that write efficiently and are really conscious of every single word and the meaning, so that it's very easy for me to get through, it's very easy for me to understand, and I'm not confronted by blocks and blocks of action that become overwhelming for a reader, especially when you have 10 to get through, you know, in a very short amount of time. So it's being conscious of the medium and its purpose in kind of making that initial sale. Of course that changes and evolves over time, but initially that's a big important part of it.
It's a little bit, I'm speaking for myself here, so please, but it's a little bit of a tough question I think sometimes, because I mean I've done a lot of scripts in a lot of different genres, and there are times when one script that I've written doesn't resemble anything like. I'm trying my best. So sometimes I think finding your voice, it can be a moving target at times. I think, at least for me, I'm saying. But I think you find over time you have certain strengths and you have certain things that you gravitate towards that maybe come a little easier, or you find you have a little bit of a knack for it. But I mean, I just find that sometimes finding that it might be a project to project.
So a voice might come out differently in project to project.
Depending upon what it is the project requires.
Because I definitely feel like if you ask 10 people, how do you define your voice? That you're going to get, or how would you define finding the voice of a writer? You're going to get 10 different answers. And I think it's really, personally, I can tell you from the experience that I've had, for a writer to launch his or her career, the finding of the voice is probably one of the key factors that takes you from non-working to working writer. So I think any piece of advice, like Alan with Straight Outta Compton, what would you say, like in your journey with that film, and finding the voice of what that film was about thematically? What was your process with that?
Well, originally, what I mentioned was I met Jerry Heller, and he started telling me this story of this kind of father-son relationship with Eazy-E. And that's when I realized the film was much more than just a hip-hop biopic. It was going to be this friendship between Jerry Heller and Eazy-E. And believe me, Dre and Q did not like Jerry Heller. And they did not want to make his part any bigger. And so we would have to go through drafts where Dre and Q were diminishing the Jerry Heller role, and we were putting it back. And the studio was putting it back. But everything kind of grew out of these original conversations with Jerry Heller because he was giving me an insight. And as much as like today, he may not be pleased with how he was portrayed, he was giving me an insight into the catalyst of this whole story. He got them their record deals and he created all the conflict. And but it was also the other voice I found in Straight Outta Compton in a lot of my work is this kind of common. It's sort of like I write stories about people being bullied and rising above being bullied. And with Compton, it was the police profiling these young black kids. And it became more topical and more topical in the news until you watch the movie and it doesn't even feel dated. And so a lot of my movies end up being, I'm working on a movie now about John in Creedence Clearwater, and he was bullied by record executives and lawyers. And so I think my voice is becoming these stories where an artist stands up for his rights. And they're all different projects, but it's becoming a common theme that I explore.
I love that.
Yeah.
See, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah. That's great. Let's see. So Frankie, I would love to hear, first of all, tell us about your company, because I'm fascinated with this. Tell us about the journey to opening your company and how writers can be involved with it.
So I started working as the producer of The Dark Knight, where I was consistently reading and looking for things like on the nickels and everything that would pop up to try and find good content to present to whomever I was like.
If the noise level was lower, you might be able to hear her.
So it was like kind of a process of trial and error. Once I left that company, I was a bit naive into how the industry worked. I just started my own company, not really realizing the capacity and like how difficult it might be in this town. But through like trials and tribulations, I guess, it's been a steady, like small victories. So I don't know if there's one thing that actually is like made my voice yet, but it's, I think it's cultivating and incubating itself as we speak.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Great. Okay, so let's talk about failure. Let's talk about the experience with failure, how you've moved past it and learned from it, how you use it to move forward. Does anyone want to share any stories with regards to any failures they've been through and what they learned from them?
When I first started out as a playwright in New York, and I made it sort of my mission to do that, I said to myself, my first job is to collect 100 rejections. Because that way, anytime a new rejection came in, I could get excited about it. And whatever keeps you off the ledge. And I would actually put them on my refrigerator and go, oh, 88 to go. Like that would sort of be my thing. Rejection aside, like there's also, as a writer, there's just the failure that happens at like 2 a.m. in your pajamas before anything even goes out into the world where you're like, oh, this is not good. This is just not good. I don't even know if it's in English. Like this is bad. But I guess what I learned from all of that is that failure is absolutely essential. Like there's no way around it. Like it is an integral part of the process. And I'm gonna swear right now, sorry mom, but even bullshit is fertilizer if you use it the right way. So like, that for me helps in those moments when I'm like, oh, nope. And I'm like, well that's just one I won't show to my agent. Like, you know.
Myth that if you like reach a certain point you will no longer experience rejection, and it's part of the job, you know, it's a big part of the job, and if anyone figures out how to really deal with it well, let me know, but it's just something that you have to become accustomed to and you have to learn from it and move on, because it's just going to keep happening.
I love rejection on some level because at least they give you an answer that way. Like I dare you to pass on this script and give me a good reason why, as opposed to like just never getting back or anything like that. So I think everybody has to deal with it. It only makes you stronger so that you can prevail.
Yeah, and fun if you didn't have to fight for them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, they mentioned something in the last panel about failing forward, which I would have to say is so true. That's something that I've written about, and it's the idea that I think if I had known when I was younger that you can fail forward and really embrace the idea of failure instead of feared it, I think it would have made all the difference. So I appreciate what you guys had to say about this. And what I'd love to ask next is, what are some stories, many of you are storytellers or you're looking for storytellers, what are some stories that have stood out in your career that made you go, this is why I love what I do? That made you just moments in your career where either you find the perfect writer, the perfect project, you hit the perfect script, or you're on set and something happens with the coming together of your material that has this magical, transformative type of experience.
I'll jump in. I was brought in to adapt a book that was co-written by Jim DeFelice, who co-wrote American Sniper, and it was about an Iraqi interpreter who worked with the U.S. Navy SEALs. And I wasn't quite sure about the project, and I met the real guy. And the Navy had him in protective custody in San Diego. And when I met the real guy, and he started telling me these heartfelt stories that weren't even in the book, that's when I connected with the project. There was something about meeting the real guy and sitting down with him, and it just brought all the emotion and the importance of the story to me. So I don't know if this ties directly what you're saying, but yeah, it was, in that particular project, I walked away from that meeting much more excited than when I walked in, because I knew I was going to tell this guy's story better than he was going to be able to tell it, and even better than the book. So, yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Alan.
I kind of get joy from the small victories. I think there's just a moment when you're writing where you're just kind of in the flow and it's kind of just going nicely, and I'm just like, yes, this is why I do it. This is why I love my job.
Yes, I agree.
It'll take me 7 hours to get 2 hours of work done, and the other 5 hours is thinking about how I'm doing that work. So it's all the work process, but there's something very satisfying about having something accomplished on that page that you've developed, and it really, really hits when you see a movie that you've worked on with a live audience and watching how they're reacting. I mean, there's nothing like a live theater of people watching something you've worked on. And that's why everybody continues to push for, don't lose the theatrical importance of a release. Because when you're in that theater with a couple hundred people and they're reacting to the emotion of something you worked on years earlier, it's so satisfying to be part of that and realize that you're reaching people, and you're no longer, there's hundreds of theaters and you're no longer in that room with those people. So creating stories that live on and touch people is really why I do it, and it's been very satisfying.
I think also part of that, for me, I went to film school for undergrad, and I remember when I was going through my senior year or whatever, and you're sitting there, and everybody wants to go to film school to direct, but you need money, you need people, you need all these sort of resources, whereas for writing, it's just you. And then what I really started to really enjoy about that was that, well, I'm investigating this thing in a way just like a director would, probably more so. So in your own head, you're directing every movie that you write, or every show that you write. And it's one of the few jobs, I think, that's out there that you can explore so many different things and really pique any interest you have and apply it to something you're working on. So for me, it's just sort of that idea of learning about the world out there, but also trying to dissect psychology and trying to understand people and trying to translate into some kind of piece of art or whatever. There's not so many places you can do that by yourself of your own volition and, you know, under your own sort of power. So it's a real, like, to me, it's a real rare, great thing to be able to have a project where you just dive in and become an expert in something for a little while. And that's, I don't know, that's part of the reason why I think it's just so fantastic what we do.
That's great. I love it.
My answer's a little different. I'm an only child, which means I don't really have social skills.
Me too.
The struggle's real. So I guess when I write, I approach it from a place of, well, this is what I'm pissed off about. Maybe you are too. And there's no bigger rush for me as a writer, and I'm sure I'm not alone. This goes along with what Alan was saying. In seeing your work up, whether it's even just a reading or a screening or whatever, and having people laugh at those moments where you were laughing, or having people gasp at those moments where you were shocking yourself, just confirms for you that, oh, I'm a person too. Like, I didn't hatch from a leathery egg. Like, we're all together in this, and I think that's part of why I do what I do.
Storytelling is a platform to actually inspire the individual within. So if you can create a story that actually inspires change, I think that's basically, so I've just started this thing called the Film Hope Foundation, which it's 501c3 is pending right now, but it's basically a slate of different films, each dealing with a different facet of mental health, like PTSD, schizophrenia, trying to get people comfortable with conversation and remove the negative stigma that it currently has on it. And I have a really great mentor who taught me independent film finance, and then somehow I took that and I hybrid it with what I was learning before, and I came up with this like new, I don't know, proprietary business plan for independent investors. But it's all about raising awareness about mental health and getting people comfortable with conversations so that if they want to go talk to somebody, they feel okay doing that. And I don't know, I just think it's a great platform to be able to like inspire change.
I love it. Jason, what about, so I know you've worked on incredible films like Captain Phillips. So what was that like? Like the idea of finding a project that goes the distance?
Well, you know, it's, when we start looking for material, it's on all stages of kind of completion. So, you know, the way our company is set up is, you know, I hate to be that package guy, but, you know, we tend to kind of look for that, or, you know, look for that thing that, you know, might be the bigger story, you know, but also finding the small stories within the big story that, you know, we can get excited. You know, when we look for material, I say we look for anything great within a genre. So we have a nice, big, broad, you know, taste level that we want to achieve, but at the same time, we look for those things that have that heightened element that feels a little bit more prestigious, that feels, you know, a little bit special. And I use the example of the woman in black. And on paper, it's just a haunted house story, but there's something there that came out that really took it to the next level and elevated it. And it's a beautiful movie, and that's, you know, a combination of the screenwriter and the director and all these different creative voices coming together. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but
I love that. So that's kind of part of your why. You like to identify.
Well, my why is very pragmatic. My why is solving problems, which is, okay, we've got this great script. Now I've got this next problem of finding the cast. Now once I get the cast, now I got the next problem of finding the director, or vice versa. And then I've got the next problem of finding, you know, maybe more elements of financing for it, and then getting the studio to like it. So I'm a little bit more pragmatic, and it's nice to hear all these, you know, artists tell their side of the story, but mine also comes from the business side of it,
which is great, definitely. All right, so, and yes.